everybody. Hey, one thing that didn't get mentioned this morning, when you first came in, you might have seen a large card sitting on the FYI counter. Some of you have been around here for quite a while, are familiar with Mike Overpeck, and you know the health challenges that he's facing right now. And he's been in Mexico doing special treatment, and been some positive signs with that, but we want to continue to show love and support for them. So if you've got a connection with them, or if you'd just like to do a shout out to them, please make sure, just take a moment and sign that card, and we'll make sure we pass that on to him. So, you know, from time to time, we do transitions in staffing. And Ashley here has been with on our team for 3 years doing Treasureland, our children's ministry, and has done an unbelievable job with that. So we are so incredibly grateful for all that you have been doing with our kiddos. Your family's been around here for longer than that. Your family got here right about the time I got here, about 8 years that the whole clan has been coming, but you've been on staff for these last 3 years. And one of the things that I love about how God works with staffing is when we're faithfully praying and seeking after Him, when we're in these conversations about timing and God is leading someone to kind of another chapter of life, at the same time, we always trust that He's stirring in somebody else to take up that baton and kind of run that next leg of the journey with that. So we're also, at the same time we're saying goodbye to Ashley, we're also welcoming Laura Rhodes onto staff to oversee our Treasureland Children's Ministry. So make sure that if you haven't had a chance to meet Laura, you come up and see her afterwards. But Ashley, we are so grateful for everything that you've done these last 3 years. If your kids are in Treasureland, you know how much they've been blessed by the ministry that Ashley has overseen these last 3 years. And you're not going anywhere. You're still around. You can't get away from us. It's not possible. Mom and Dad would track you down if you tried. So they're not going anywhere. They're still going to be around here, still going to be involved with some of the children's ministry stuff and everything. But we want, as a church family, to say our thank you for your commitment. So would you guys give some love to Ashley for these 3 years? So that's the big voices saying thank you. We've also got some little voices that would like to say thank you. Thank you. So,
okay. As I gather myself, as Chris mentioned, sometimes it stirs something inside of you, and Ashley and her family have stirred something inside of me, along with the rest of the church family. But I'm very thankful to be part of this ministry moving forward. But it does take a village, and so that's where I'm asking you. These yellow sheets of paper that are in your programs, I want your heart to think on it, and I would love for you to be a part of our ministry downstairs, volunteering. I actually listened to a podcast earlier this week, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I actually listened to it again this morning before I came to church. But the number one variable for children are intergenerational mentors. So that means whether you're a parent, a grandparent, not a grandparent, you can still be a mentor to our children here. It is our responsibility to make little disciples out of them, and that's what Ashley has been doing to my little minions downstairs. So I hope that I can fill her shoes. One last statistic that I want to leave you with, and then I can turn it over to Chris, is 84% of people that turn their life over to Christ do it before the age of 14. 84%. So most of the people in here have already turned their life over to Christ, so now it's our responsibility to go downstairs and help make them believers.
Okay. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Why don't I keep Kleenex up here? So we are in week number 3 of our series called Sync. And in this series, we have been talking about how important it is for us to make the most of the time that we have left here on earth. None of us knows how much time we have left, for sure, but what we do know is that God's desire is for us to use that time wisely and to invest it intentionally into those things that matter the most to his heart. This series is all about syncing up our resources with God's priorities. We want to make sure that what we are doing here in our time on earth really matters in the scope of eternity. And as we learn more and more about the things that matter the most and are the nearest and dearest to the heart of God, they should also become the things that matter the most and are the nearest and dearest to our hearts as well. We need to sync up our hearts and our minds with the heart and mind of our Heavenly Father. Because when we do that, incredible things happen, and God shows up in amazing ways, and he does things that only God can do. Now, if you're here last week, you heard some great stories from our youth group members that went to the Dominican Republic in June on how God had stirred in their hearts so that things like poverty have become more important to them, and the accumulation of stuff has become less important as their hearts become more and more in sync with the heart of God. And I want to take the next few minutes to share another example of how God stirs and syncs up people's hearts to match his heart for the world around us. Would you guys give some love as Jessica Paymer and her dad Doyle Holden join me up here on the stage? So if you've been around here for a few years, you may remember that in the spring of 2015, we had a representative from Destiny Rescue attended our service. How many of you were here for that? He had the cool Australian accent. Remember that? You guys didn't want to hear me at all. You're just like, hey, Chris, be quiet so we can keep listening to Peter. So, but he just shared this amazing reality of something horrific that is going on in the world around us. And one of the things that we had to start wrapping our heads around at that time was this statistic that there are 27 million men, women, and children who are currently in some form of slavery around the world, many of them being used as slaves in sex trafficking. And that was the information that we received. That was the information we had to start wrestling with this reality of. And it hit all of us differently, didn't it? Jess, you remember being here that day very vividly. What was that like for you, taking in that information for the very first time?
Yeah, absolutely. It was 2015, and I was pregnant with my daughter Zoe at the time. And as I sat out there in the audience, all I could do was hold my stomach to cradle my child, because my heart broke that this is the world that I will be bringing her into. And it broke for these women and these children that, thank God for Destiny Rescue, but if it weren't for them, who would come, you know? And a few months before that, when I first found out I was pregnant, after my initial freak out, I made a promise to my child, to myself, and to God that I would spend the rest of my life protecting her and looking over her and making sure that to the very best of my ability, I would always keep her happy, safe, and healthy. And as I sat out in one of those chairs over there, God called out to me again, and he told me he wanted me to make that promise again. He said, when you first made that promise, you had yet to meet your child. You didn't know her face or her name or what her voice sounded like. And despite not knowing these things, you still knew that you would spend the rest of your life loving her fiercely. And just as she was my child, God was telling me that these women and children are his. And although I don't know them and I might not ever get to meet them or see their faces, they deserve that same exact promise for protection and love. And so I sat out there, and God totally moved in me, and he moved in us, and I made that promise again, and that's what we're doing. That's going to stick with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And that was one of the emphasis that we really focused on after them being here, was that each of us has to do our own part. I mean, when you think about that statistic, 27 million, you think, what am I possibly going to do to make a dent in that kind of a number? But we decided that it's not about us taking care of everything. It's about all of us doing our little part to be a part of the solution. And we had several people that ran with things after that. We had someone that put a bowling tournament together. We had some ladies put a golf tournament together, and a family that sold chocolates, and they got their kids involved with that. Fight Club had a couple chapters where we did some fundraising for that. And as a church family, we 30, 40 rescues or so over these last 4 years, which has been really exciting. But also got a hold of your family in a huge way to do something about this. And you guys thought, hey, we're going to do a garage sale. Now, how many of you have had a garage sale before? Okay, you haven't had anything like what they have. They thought, hey, we're going to do a little garage sale, about $1,500 to rescue a child. We're hoping to get enough to rescue one child. So 2015, that very same year, you guys did it, hoping to rescue one child, rescued 4 children that year, raised $6,000. The next year, wanted to do it again, hoping to match that, and you raised enough to rescue 5 kids. So that has been a huge thing. So, Jess, let me ask you this then. When you think about this current series that we're going through called Sync, what have you been learning about the importance of syncing up your heart and mind with the heart and mind of God when it comes to this issue?
I know that it's really, really easy to come here every Sunday or twice a week or whatever your schedule looks like. It's easy to come in here and to be a part of the fellowship and the worship and to learn about God. That's the easy thing to do. It's so easy. It's easy to learn about the things that move God's heart. But it's also easy the minute we hit those doors to forget completely all about everything that we've learned inside of these walls. And I know that it's also easy to kind of stick our heads in the sand, especially when we think that these injustices that we hear about don't directly affect us. But I'm telling everybody in this room that as followers of Christ, this stuff directly affects each and every one of us. Because it doesn't matter what country we live in, or the color of your skin, or the language that you speak, or if you're a Republican or a Democrat, or what football team you like. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters.
Let's not get personal here. Let's not get personal.
None of that stuff matters, because we are all beautifully stitched together in this. We're stitched together with one commonality, and that one thing is Christ. The Bible tells us that we are all children of God. So that means that you're my pastor and you're my brother, and Linda, you're my mentor, and you're also my sister. So we're all family, guys. We're all in this together, and family takes care of each other. Family fights for each other. Family will move mountains for each other. And this is what our fight looks like. It looks like a garage sale, Some people might look at it and think it's a bunch of junk, but this is how we're fighting. And God's putting it on my heart that one day our fight is going to look much different. But for now, it looks like a garage sale, which is fine. But your fight might look like praying or volunteering or donating or going on a missions trip. And that's great, because like I said, we all fight differently. But what is not okay is to have this great purpose that God has put on your heart and on your life, and for you to allow your fight to be absent from that.
So this year, you're going big.
We're going big.
I've never seen you so fired up about this garage sale.
I can't sleep.
I need to come up with another term for this thing, because what you guys are doing is not a garage sale.
No, I know.
But tell us about, give us the information, the dates, what you need. I know you've got a sign-up sheet out here for people to get involved, so tell us what you're thinking.
So we still need some volunteers, and we have quite a few slots left. I put a sheet out there. You can sign up there. There's also some flyers out there. And we need some donations still. But we need really great donations. Something that maybe might take a little bit of a sacrifice on your part, maybe a brand new item or stuff like that. That's the kind of things that we need that will help us raise the most money to save as many women and children as we absolutely can. If you guys know anybody that owns a business, or if you own a business yourself, we need big raffle items that we can raffle off this year. Let's see, what else do we need? Yeah, Saturday we'll be out at Goshen Plumbing and Heating for pricing and organizing things from 10 to 2. So if you want to come out and drop your donations off then, you can, or you can come out and hang out with us. We're pretty goofy. And, and you can help us price things. And
the actual sale is October 6th.
Yes.
And you're going to be doing every Saturday
Yes.
between now and then?
Yep.
So anybody who wants to come out, okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So make sure you guys get out there and sign up for those spots. I know every time you guys do this, more and more people get involved. It's so much fun to be a part of what God has laid on your heart and how that it's expanded to be, like you said, part of a community, that we're a family that's fighting together and doing our part together. So,
Absolutely.
So make sure if you could be available out there
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yep, I'll be
that
here.
would be awesome. Okay. Give some love for these guys. This is awesome. So thank you. Man, she gets fired up like that. I feel like I should just pray and send you all home. I'm like, what the heck am I doing up here? Man, good stuff. Hey, one thing that you'll notice, how many of you were here last week with the youth sharing? That was awesome, wasn't it? You will never find more passion in your life than when your heart and your mind and how you use your time and your resources are strongly synced up with the things that matter the most to God. You know, one of the biggest hindrances that we have as American Christians and how well we sync up with God's priorities is how we use our stuff, how we allocate our resources. Because the bottom line is the problem we have with thinking is that we think that it's our stuff to begin with. That's our biggest problem. If you brought your Bible with you today, go ahead and open up to Matthew 25. Matthew's the first book of the New Testament portion of the Bible, and along with the books of Mark, Luke, and John, it tells us stories from the time that Jesus was here on earth. If you don't have your Bibles, we'll have the verses up on the screen for you. But 2 weeks ago, we looked at the first story in Matthew 25, which is a reminder that we should always live our lives with the end in mind. We looked at the story of the 10 bridesmaids and how when the groom finally arrived, half of them were found to be unprepared and out of oil for their lamps, which were supposed to be used to light the way for the groom to get to the bride. The story was an analogy of what it is going to be like when Jesus returns. That there are going to be many people who will look the part, but upon closer examination, they will be found to not be in sync with Jesus and what matters the most to him. And as a result, they will be eternally separated from him, while those who are in sync with him will be ushered into his presence for all of eternity. And this idea of always being prepared, it continues in the next story that we read in Matthew 25, which is our focus for today. This story is often referred to as the parable of the talents in some versions. This version refers to the money, which the talents was actually money, not like what we think of as talents. This version actually uses the idea of bags of gold. So let's take a look at this, starting in verse 14. Again, now it's a continuation. We just had the story of the 10 bridesmaids. Make sure you're prepared. And he's telling another story to re-emphasize this. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. Now, this would not have been an unusual scenario for those days. A wealthy landowner would sometimes need to leave on a business trip. They didn't know how long that they would be gone for sure, because at that time, the means of travel were undependable. Communication was often not even possible. So the servants would see when they left, but they didn't know when they would return, so they always needed to be ready. Let's continue, verse 15. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Now, a bag of gold at that point would have been basically like for your general day laborer, that would have been 20 years of labor for a general day laborer. That's how much money we're talking here for a bag of gold, okay, just to kind of put this into context. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work, and he gained 5 more bags. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and he hid his master's money. So each of them is trusted with a lot of money. But regardless of how much money each received, the point of the story is this. It's not about how much you have, it's about what you do with what you do have. Our mindset's usually different than that, isn't it? Especially here in the U.S., we want to put emphasis on how much. We want to compare ourselves to others. But that's not a biblical understanding of our stuff at all. God tells us that it's not about how much we have, it's about what we do with what we've been given. Verse 19, after a long time, the master of those servants returned, and he settled accounts with them. So he was gone a long time. We don't know how long, but based on how much return two of them got, it may very well have been years that he had been gone. As a servant, and you would have either been excited or you would have been terrified when you heard the master had returned, and all of that would have been based on one thing, whether you were prepared or not. Verse 20, the man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. And his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came and said, Master, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. And his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share with your master's happiness. Now notice that both of these servants received the same reward. They both received the same benefits. They were not rewarded differently based on how much they had, but rather they were rewarded based on how faithful that they had been with what was entrusted to them. And then the master gets to the third servant. Look at how this interaction goes. Verse 24. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you're a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, gathering where you have not scattered seed. So before this servant even shows what he has, he's making excuses. You know anybody like that? Verse 25. So I was afraid, and I went out and I hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. Now, at this point in the story, we might be thinking, well, that's not the worst thing that he could have done with the money, right? I mean, it's not like he wasted it. He didn't gamble it away. He didn't spend it on himself. So it doesn't seem like what he really did was that bad of a thing. But check out the master's response in verse 26. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have at least received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That seems a little harsh, doesn't it? Seems a little harsh. But let's take a few minutes to think and look at this from the master's perspective. And as we're doing this, I want you to be thinking about how this relates to our relationship with God as he is the master and we are his servants. First, let's go back and look again at verse 14, where it says, it will be like a man going on a journey who calls his servants and what? Entrusted his wealth to them. 2 key things that we have got to wrap our heads around. 1, it's his wealth, not ours. It's his wealth, not ours. Everything belongs to God. Second, everything that he gives to us is something that he is what? Entrusting us with. In other words, he is expecting us to handle our resources in a way that reflects and honors who he is and would be pleasing to him. So everything we do with these resources is supposed to be a reflection of what the master himself would do with these resources. This whole issue of ownership drastically changes how we see and understand what the Bible has to say about money. Because if we truly see it all belonging to God, and we understand that we are simply stewards of these resources, then we will very much want to know what the Bible teaches about what that's supposed to look like on a regular basis. However, if we do what most people do and see our resources as ours, then we don't worry about trying to learn what the Bible has to say about how to use it faithfully, because we've decided that our plan is better than God's plan. And when we understand that it all belongs to God, we don't get caught up in the comparison game with others. Instead, we are simply grateful for that which he has entrusted to us. And when we live lives of gratefulness towards God for what he entrusts us with, we respond by being generous people because that is God's desire for our lives, and we desire to be in sync with God's priorities for our lives. And when we fail to be generous people, when we fail to give the way the Bible tells us that we should give, we are in essence stealing from God. In fact, in the book of Malachi, the last book of the Old Testament portion of the Bible, we're told that when we do not bring the tithe to be used towards the ministry of God, we are stealing from God. And when you read those verses, we have to note that it says when we bring the tithe, not when we give the tithe. You can't give 10% because guess what? It's not yours to begin with. You bring the tithe. It already belongs to God, and we're faithfully using it towards those things that matter the most to him. You know, I thought of this example this week as I was thinking about this whole idea of how we steal from God. And, you know, with finalizing our adoption this month, a number of you blessed us with some gift cards to some of our favorite places to go as a family, and a few people gave us some Visa cards to be used for gifts for the girls. So just imagine this scenario with me, all right? Imagine I get a $100 Visa card that was given with the instructions that it is to go to be used for the girls. But I decide that I need a new pair of shoes and a new pair of jeans. What would you call that? Not what would you call me? What would you call that? Right? That would be stealing, right? I mean, that in essence would be stealing. I was entrusted with a resource that was to be used for a specific purpose, but I decided to treat it like it belonged to me instead and do what I want with it. Guys, if we're honest about this, we do this all the time in our daily lives to God, don't we? God has given us these amazing resources, and in his word, he has made it very clear about the priorities that we should be using those resources on, yet we say to ourselves, yeah, that's good and all, but I need this, and I need this, so I'm just going to use it for that instead. And instead of living lives of gratitude and generosity, we live the lives of thieves using somebody else's resources for our own gain. It all belongs to God. And whatever you have in resources are entrusted to you by him, not simply for your own desires, but for those things that matter the most to him. And not only do we need to remember that we're entrusted with his resources, but we also need to know that we will be held accountable for those resources. So we need to be intentional. The servant with the one bag of gold was called wicked and lazy. And to hear these words, we would expect that he did something a little more severe than simply bury the gold and give it back when the master returns. But the whole point is that that is exactly what the guy did. He buried it and did nothing with it whatsoever. Again, one of the main themes from these stories in Matthew 25 is that it's not about what you have, it's about what you do with what you have. God didn't entrust you with his resources so that you could bury them in the ground. We are to use them. We are to invest them. We are to leverage them so that when he returns, there will be a kingdom return on his investment. And when we stand before God, we will give an account on what we did with that which he entrusted to us. So let us take responsibility now, or we will be held accountable later. Now, it's not too late. It's not too late. Maybe being intentional with your money and other resources, that's a phrase we need to eliminate, isn't it? Being intentional with your money and your resources. Maybe being intentional with God's money and other resources that he has entrusted to us, maybe that hasn't been a priority to this point. That can change today. You can make a choice today to start getting more in sync with God's heart and desire for how you are supposed to use the resources that he has given to you and entrusted to you. You can start today in a whole new direction. Take a final look back at verse 16 with me one more time. What did it tell us about that first man? The man who had received 5 bags of gold, what? Went at once. It's all about intentionality. It's all about hearing God's word and not just hearing it, doing it. It's about intentionality. He went at once. What if we decided to get crystal clear on those things that matter most to the heart of God and invest heavily in them with all that we possibly can? What would that look like for you? What would that look like for us as a church family? Imagine allowing God to stir in you in such a way that you experience the passion that we heard from our youth last week, from Jessica today, about some world issue that matters deeply to God. And then we decide to go at once and begin becoming a part of the solution through the use of our time and through the use of our resources. It all starts with surrendering ourselves to the one who made us and has an amazing plan for our lives. A plan that involves drawing others to himself and getting invested in those issues that are near and dear to his heart. Would you go ahead and stand with me? We're going to sing this final song today. Reed's going to lead us in this. And I want this to be a song of prayer for us, that we are coming before God today ready to recommit ourselves to him. That we are coming to God today with our arms wide open, going, all right, God, this is all yours. And if I'm being honest about it, God, I'm not getting it right now. I'm getting caught up in this closed fist thing of this is mine, 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 mine. And I want to see it again the way it was intended, God. I want to see and understand that it's all yours. This is all yours. And if it's all yours, that means I have to live life with my hands open. I have to live life with gratitude, and that needs to be shown in how I am being generous on a day-to-day basis. God, help us, arms wide open, to live with hands open wide, to recognize it's all yours, God. So teach us, God. Teach us what matters the most to you. Teach us how we are to invest your resources on your behalf to the world around us. Let's make that our prayer during this song. God, this is how we want to be in front of you all the time. We want to be your servants that you work in and that you work through. But we have to get it, that we have to live our lives with arms wide open. We have to be a people who love you enough to allow your resources to flow through us. They don't get to stop with us. They don't get to become ours. You have entrusted all of it to us, and we need to live with arms wide open and hands wide open. God, I just pray that would you be with each of us as we take some time this week to reflect on this series, on this message today, about looking at your resources differently, about how we can live our lives on a daily basis more in sync with what matters the most and is nearest and dearest to your heart. Allow that to become the things that are the nearest and dearest to our hearts. God, I thank you so much for the youth and the passion that they shared last week, for Jessica and Doyle and their family and the passion they shared this week. And God, I want that for everybody in here. I want everybody in here to have that area in life that matters so much to you, that they are so passionate about, that they can't help but step up and do something about it. And the reality is, God, a lot of us don't have that going right now. So would you begin to stir inside of each of us? Would you begin to awaken those passions? And when we see them, would you give us the courage and the boldness and the faith to step forward and step into those situations and begin using your resources to be a part of the solution? Because we want to be those first two servants, God. when we stand before you someday, we want you to look at what we did and that we were so in tune with what you were all about, that we used your resources faithfully for the things that matter the most. To hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. Come and enjoy for eternity in your master's happiness. That's our desire, God, today. Help it become a reality. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Please be with us next week. I know it's a holiday weekend. Try to get here if you can. Katie and Derek Allen, our wonderful missionary friends from the Dominican Republic, are going to be here and have some incredible things to share with you. Have an awesome week.